Imagine this. Berlin, 1820. In a small, dimly lit apartment, a man sits alone at his desk. Outside, the world celebrates the rise of Hegel, the philosopher who had captivated universities with promises of progress, reason, and the triumph of human history. Crowds fill lecture halls. Students praise him. But in this room, one man seethes with disgust. He believes the entire world is blind. He believes life itself is not a grand march of progress, but a cruel, endless cycle of suffering. That man is Arthur Schopenhauer. And while his contemporaries celebrated optimism and reason, Schopenhauer had the audacity to tell humanity the one thing it didn't want to hear, that existence itself might be a mistake. Arthur Schopenhauer was born in 1788 in Danzig, Prussia, what is now Gdansk, Poland. His father, a wealthy merchant, wanted him to join the family business. His mother was a socialite, obsessed with appearances, parties, and the approval of others. Arthur despised both. He rejected society. He rejected superficial happiness. He rejected the illusion that life was somehow meant to be enjoyed. As a young man, he locked himself away from the world, dedicating his life to study. While others searched for progress, optimism, and purpose, Schopenhauer carved his philosophy in the language of despair. He looked at the human condition with cold, brutal honesty. And what he saw was not meaning, but misery. At the core of Schopenhauer's philosophy is a single, devastating truth. Life is suffering. Why? Because of what he called the will. Not the willpower we usually think of, but a blind, irrational, unconscious force, the will to live. It's what drives every creature to eat, to reproduce, to cling to life at all costs. But here's the problem. The will never stops wanting. It pushes us forward, endlessly, into new desires, new hungers, new cravings. We want wealth, we want recognition, we want love, and the moment we get it, we want more. Desire breeds suffering, and fulfillment only breeds boredom. For Schopenhauer, life was a pendulum swinging between two agonies, the agony of craving and the agony of emptiness once the craving is gone. There is no escape. Schopenhauer's worldview stood in stark opposition to the thinkers of his time. While Hegel preached a grand, rational unfolding of history, and while the Enlightenment promised human progress, Schopenhauer scoffed. He called Hegel a charlatan. He mocked philosophers who sold comfort and illusions. For Schopenhauer, the idea that life was getting better was absurd. The world was not moving toward justice, happiness, or harmony. It was simply repeating itself, endlessly, driven by blind will, chained to suffering. To many, Schopenhauer seems like a prophet of despair. But here's the paradox. His philosophy isn't about hopelessness, it's about clarity. When we strip away the lies, when we stop pretending that life is meant to be a festival of joy, we begin to see reality for what it is. And in that brutal clarity, there is freedom. If you expect life to make you happy, you will suffer endlessly. But if you see life for what it is, hard, cruel, impermanent, then suffering loses its sting. The pessimist does not expect the world to be kind, and so he cannot be disappointed. But Schopenhauer wasn't entirely without light. For him, there was one escape from the tyranny of the will, and that was art. When we lose ourselves in music, in painting, in poetry, we step outside the endless hunger of desire. For a brief moment, the will is silenced. We are no longer wanting, striving, aching. We are simply perceiving. This is why Schopenhauer loved music above all arts. He called it the direct copy of the will itself. And yet, paradoxically, it was also the thing that freed us from the will, even if only for a few fleeting minutes. Art, in his eyes, was not entertainment. It was salvation. And here comes the strangest twist in Schopenhauer's dark philosophy. Despite his bleakness, he believed in compassion. If life is suffering, then to cause pain is the greatest evil. And to alleviate suffering, even in small ways, is the greatest good. Schopenhauer argued that morality does not come from reason or laws. It comes from empathy. From the moment we look at another being and recognize their suffering as our own. This is why, unlike many of his contemporaries, Schopenhauer was one of the first Western philosophers to admire Buddhism and Hinduism, traditions that recognized the universality of suffering, traditions that sought not happiness, but release from desire itself. But Schopenhauer went further. For him, the ultimate escape from suffering was not art, not even compassion. It was something far more radical, the denial of the will. To stop desiring, to stop craving, to turn away from the endless cycle of hunger and pain. This is why Schopenhauer admired ascetic monks, those who renounced pleasure, possessions, even life itself. To deny the will is to escape the prison of existence, to reach a state of peace beyond suffering. For Schopenhauer, this was the closest thing to salvation. Of course, Schopenhauer was not a saint. He was famously bitter, lonely, and often cruel in his judgments of others. He fought with colleagues. He despised his mother. He lived much of his life in obscurity, ignored by the academic world. And yet he endured. He wrote. He produced one of the most hauntingly powerful philosophies ever conceived. And though he saw life as suffering, he left behind a strange kind of wisdom, that in accepting life's pain we rob it of its power, that by letting go of desire we find a freedom deeper than pleasure, and that even in the darkest truths there can be a form of light. Schopenhauer died in 1860, but his philosophy did not die with him. His writings profoundly influenced Nietzsche, Freud, Tolstoy, Wagner, and countless modern thinkers. His darkness became the soil from which new philosophies grew. Existentialism, psychoanalysis, even modern psychology's exploration of desire and suffering. In many ways, Schopenhauer was the first true philosopher of the abyss. And from that abyss, he forced us to confront a truth we would rather ignore, that life is pain. And yet, within that pain, there is the possibility of transformation. Arthur Schopenhauer has been called the darkest philosopher in history. But darkness isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's the only place we find what is real. Because when the illusions fall away, when we stop expecting happiness, when we embrace the inevitability of suffering, something happens. We become free. Not free from pain, but free from the chains of expectation. Schopenhauer teaches us that wisdom is not the art of pretending life is good. It is the art of facing life as it is. And in that brutal honesty, there may just be a strange, unshakable peace.